Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Even farmers in an ad for weed control would rather not be spraying weeds. That's what we're here for. Bayer cereal herbicides work to control weeds in your wheat, barley, and oats, so you can do what you do best. Get back to farming. Get back to what you love.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. I am so excited to have a fantastic new guest joining us. Welcome, Art Lange. How are you?
Oh, I'm well, and thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure, and I am so excited. I think we're going to be opening a can or two or three of worms today. You guys are in for a real treat here. I am currently, as you know, Art, and you guys in the audience, we are working through a transition planning series. And right now we're diving into a lot of the communication-focused topics, as I feel those can be some of the biggest stumbling blocks for farm families and transition. Now, today, Art's on the show, and we're going to be talking about some of the really red-hot underlying issues when it comes to farm transition, So, welcome, Art. I'm so happy to have you. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you before we get started, and then we'll dive right in.
Okay. A little bit about my background. I'm not from a farm. I'm basically a city kid that got countrified through a whole series of circumstances that, of course, I won't go into, but I'm so glad I did. I worked on a farm east of Calgary where I grew up and really got an interest in the farming lifestyle and what it was all about. I went to university, tried to become a veterinarian. That didn't work because my marks weren't nearly good enough.
Yeah.
I completed my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture here at the University of Alberta, and I've been working in the ag industry ever since in various portions thereof. So for the last 17 years, I've been an independent farm business consultant, doing farm business plans, financial projections, and helping people out of financial difficulties sometimes. And for the last 10 years or so, also working on farm succession planning with farm families.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you. I was super excited when you came to me with the idea about talking strictly about the underlying issues. I come from farm families. I know farmers. I chat with a lot of advisors, and we talk about communication and the soft skills. We talk about all the technical details that need to happen to make transition planning happen. It's really important. But I've been working my way to this episode where we just take that can of worms and we open it up. Because in my opinion, and I know many of the advisors like you, Art, and you'll jump in here right away, there are a lot of issues in relationships and farm families where people aren't actually going to say what's on their mind. And instead of saying, hey, I'm concerned about, they just stall. They just ignore the conversation. And guess what happens? Both generations are doing this. They're butting heads. Nothing happens. So I really want to have this conversation with you and get your feedback on some of the top underlying issues that really hold transition planning up. And I have a feeling if people in our audience, especially the second generation, are going, well, why are mom and dad ignoring me? Why aren't they talking about it? I have a feeling a lot of what you're about to say is going to be a real eye opener and give them a new perspective on the topic. So you shared with me that you really feel there's two basic problems in a farmer's mind when it comes to transition planning that makes it difficult. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, sure. The two overarching or underlying issues, as we're dealing with in this case, is success founders, which I'll call the parents, although they may not be founders of the farm actually, don't really want to get going because they do have some underlying concerns, which we'll get into as we talk about later. And then they say, oh, well, so-and-so down the road tried this and it just came into a big family squabble. They argued, and people walked out of the room. So I don't need a scenario like that. If that's the way it's going to go? So, yeah. So basically, a hesitancy to get started, and then the concern of when we do get started, how's it going to go? Is it just going to create a lot of tension and friction in the family?
Okay, so I do think that is the big one. A lot of them don't want to address it, and that is the founders, right? Because the upcoming generation, they're eager. They have all these ideas. They want to farm. They want to be like mom and dad. But the older generation, they don't want to talk about it for various reasons. So do you want to start and dive into those various reasons? Talking about, I think, number one, here's the good one. Let's talk about the good old control.
Yeah. Well, the founders, they've been in control of their farm for, lots of years. And they're comfortable in that role, and it's fine as long as you do it my way, kind of thing. And as we get older, and I have some experience with that, become a little bit more set in our ways. And when some young upstart comes up to me and says, hey, I got this great idea, it's gonna, but we have to change this and add that and buy that and all that kind of stuff, that does create some challenges in the mind for the senior generation. And so how do the founders let go? Well, first of all, I would say you don't have to let go all at once. It can be done in stages over a period of time. And people that I work with, we have a plan that we map out how it can happen over a period of time. And I generally like to say about 5 years for doing that. But realize for the founders, you do have to let go of control sometime, either while you're alive or when you've passed away. As Elaine Fries puts it, you can either do it with a warm hand or a cold one.
Yes.
And it's so much better for all concerned if it's with a warm hand, because then everybody involved is part of the process. And I'm reminded of a team building exercise or instruction that I was involved in many years ago. And the basic premise is people will support what they help to build, and they will resist stuff that's foisted upon them. So understand that. So that's the warm hand. On the other hand, if you choose to say, well, it's not my problem, the kids can work it out after I'm gone, that's another approach, certainly. And but the problem that leads to is usually the will says divide the estate 4 ways if there are 4 children. That really makes it, really totally unfair for the on-farm child that's lived here and worked there for many years probably, and he gets the same portion as everybody else. And he hasn't got the money to buy out the other siblings, or he can't get the financing. And so what's he left with? Well, he's left with a broken heart and sad and all that kind of stuff. So it's a sad situation if you decide to go that route. But it's another way to go. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I've said this a few times on the show already, Art, and I like to say I have a leg, and I'm sure people are getting tired of me saying this, but I feel I'm at a sweet spot age-wise where I have a leg on this side of the fence that I'm old enough to understand where the founders are coming from and how they would feel with the young pup chomping at the bit to try and take control. I respect that. I mean, do we ever feel like we're too old, right? In farming, our years are so long. And really, by the time you're hitting your stride, now the next generation comes in and wants to take it all away. Hey, I don't know about that. You know, I feel that pain. But then on the other side, I'm young enough to understand the enthusiasm, the eager, the desire to own. So I can quickly flip back and forth and feel the pain for both of them. And what I like to do with the show is bring people on like you and talk about these issues. They're real. And if transition isn't being brought up by the parents, probably one of these issues you're going to name are the reason. But exactly that, there's got to be a strategy going forward. Shutting down and not having the conversation until you are in the casket at hopefully 90 plus years old, that's not a good solution. So I hear you on that one. Yeah. Do you want to go into a little bit more on that, or did you want to dive right into the next one?
Well, the next one is really all related to the first one, and they all intertwine in a way. And the founders feel that their livelihood will be threatened if they sign over assets to the successors.
Okay.
Or the founders are worried that the assets would get mismanaged, money gets spent, and that's a realistic concern because the assets are usually the parents' retirement package. And anything adverse happens to those assets, then the parents' income in retirement is threatened, and they've worked for that for many years. So that's a realistic concern. So how do you do that? Well, my reply is the next generation needs some assets that they can borrow money with, and lenders like land because land doesn't go anywhere. It stays there, and the lenders know if things do go sideways, they've got the land as security. So the successors need some land on which to build equity. On the other hand, the founders want land because it's their security. It's not going anywhere.
Yes.
And if need be, they can sell land for their retirement income. So my suggestion is that the land transfer happens slowly over a period of time. And the majority of the land be held in the parents' name till they pass, and then the land can be passed via the will. So,
okay, that's fair.
That is seems to me a good strategy. In fact, that was recommended to me by one of my colleagues, Alan Sawiak, who is a farm tax specialist and accountant with a accounting firm here in Edmonton. Okay. So, that strategy has been working quite well. It gives security to the founders and also gives something to the successors to build on.
I love it. And you know what? That's a little bit carrot at the end of the stick. It's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And you know what? Then they have some skin in the game too, right? But it's not a all or nothing proposition. They have enough to feel like they're building. They have enough to borrow against. Mm-hmm. And then the founding generation, they have that security financially and also mentally that it's not all something's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that.
The other point that I should mention is that off-farm children have to be considered in the whole succession plan, of course. And so if the successor is given or some land or sold at a very favorable price, then the off-farm children have to be considered at the same time. And so what I've been working with is that they also get some land. It may not be an equal portion, but it gets some land, and then the on-farm child can rent the land from his or her siblings at a prearranged price, and also have first option to buy that land somewhere down the line. But it has to be clearly spelled out in the succession plan. After 5 years or so, Joe, the on-farm child, has the first option to buy the land, and also what price, at present prices, future prices, somewhere in between. So that all has to be worked out. So both sides know, okay, in 5 years or 7 or 10, whatever number is chosen, this is going to be the arrangement. And of course, if 3 off-farm siblings decide to sell at the same time, that's a problem. So there has to be some staging in there.
Yes, because then the farm child's renting all that land, and then all of a sudden, poof, all their grain or pasture land's gone, right?
Yeah.
Smart.
So, yeah,
okay.
So issues that can all be worked through if, like you mentioned at the outset, if they're talked about, some agreement is found, and it's written down, signed, and agreed to. Yes.
Okay. That's a great idea. That covers the control and everybody being happy. I mean, that covers the parent, the farming child, and the off-farm children as well. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, of course, there has to be adequate land to make that happen.
Right.
I've worked with farms that have a very small land base, like intensive livestock operations. Then you have to look at other avenues to try and make something work.
Okay, that's a good note. Okay, good. So that's control, livelihood. Did you want to touch on anything else there?
No, I think we've covered that quite well.
Okay, I like to give ample opportunity to just take all the wisdom out of your brain. That's what I try and do. So if I keep on asking, don't feel pressured.
That's okay.
Okay, good. So control. And I would say, heck, I know a lot of farmers, and control would have been the number one. And also their security too. That's the underlying concern. And I mean, I'm a landowner. I'm a farmer. I like being in control of my livelihood, destiny, and financial outcome. So heck, I'll say it too. I would be concerned about losing control over my farming operation with kids coming in. So that is a legitimate point to make. So, okay, control, and we took care of land in that part. Do you want to dive into farmers and the fact that farmers never like to stop farming, and the fact that they may or may not have off-farm interests? Do you want to go there?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm finding this to be more of a problem, that farmers are so focused on farming, and farms are getting larger and requiring more attention, especially diversified farms, that their time and interest in outside the farm or off the farm interest is declining. And that to me is a bit of a sad situation in one way. It's bad. It's a sad situation for the community. A couple of years ago, I read this book. Is that showing up?
Okay, yep, I can see it. What's it called? The Third Pillar.
The Third Pillar.
Okay.
And it's written by an economist, and it's a thick book, it's about yay.
Oh, wow.
And it's surprisingly readable. I got into it and actually finished it.
Okay, right on.
In that book, the writer starts way back in the 1500s or someplace like that, and says, this is how the 3 pillars of society have evolved. And the 3 pillars being the government, business, the industry, the marketplace, and the community. And what suffered over the past 500 years or so is the community.
Okay.
Because when we were a small agrarian society, well, not we, but other people,
Yeah.
people held together in very small rural type of society and villages because they relied on each other very much for their livelihood. But that's largely gone away, and we've become large independent operations. And so what suffered most in that time is that our sense of community is being lost. I'm the chairman of our local ag society, and I know how difficult it is to get volunteers. Now, ours being on the fringes of Edmonton is not truly rural. It's sort of a semi-urban bedroom type of community, but I see that in a lot of small towns. Some sort of manage to keep going where there is a spirit of community and people want to work together to make something happen in that community. And I've seen that, you know, the elevator is probably gone, the railway's gone, the school's gone, this is gone. And then some people give up and other people say, no, we can make our community life here, and the community hall and the community life carries on. But I'm afraid we're losing that. And as part of the succession to the founders, I would say that you're going to have to change your lifestyle somewhat into your retirement years. And why not pick up on some of that community vacuum that exists there and get involved with a local service club, a church, the ag society, whatever, because they're always looking for people, and you have a wealth of wisdom as what's happened in your community, what can be done, what hasn't been done, and possible opportunities for the future. So I see that as a great win for the community, a win for farmers to develop outside interests, get involved outside the farm. That is something to give you purpose for life when the farming situation over time will pass on to the successors.
Yeah.
Or it should.
Yeah. We hope.
So that's my mantra on that one.
Hey, Art, you know, I think that is a very valid point. And, you know, I'm a business owner times two. We farm, but I own Farm Marketer, the media company. And I am really passionate about my work. It fills me up. It's what I enjoy doing. Rather than sitting down and watching TV, I could easily just pick up my work and not feel stress and enjoy it, like fun. So I see and I feel with farmers too, that feeling where you go, okay, this is all I've done. It's our identity, right? We're a farmer, we're a business person. That's how we operate, how we identify ourselves. Now, all of a sudden, somebody wants to come and take over our farm. What are we? What do we do? And I almost think maybe we have an onus on ourselves, if possible, time-wise, to start that outside involvement earlier. Because to be honest, myself, and even at my age, Art, every year I get more into business and farming and less involved in anything else. That becomes a habit.
Yeah.
Right?
In fact, just a year ago, at our Ag Society convention for Alberta, I spoke to a group of young farmers, giving them business tips for starting their farming operation. And I heavily stressed this point about getting involved in the community, in their ag society and other things, because this is what draws people together. And when you really need help in a time of trouble, where are you going to turn to? Yeah. If you don't have those connections, that's really sad.
Well, and you know, Art, I will say something. Your generation, my parents' generation, you guys were great with community. Mm-hmm. And probably I'd almost even say stronger with family and visiting. Anthony's parents, my husband's parents, they go they used to go out and visit all the time.
Yeah.
We don't visit very much. We just work. And I'm actually really interested in reading that book you suggested, because that's something that's played on my brain. But, and again, different couples, different people are more sociable than not. But I find as a generation, the visiting each other has gone out the window. The community's gone out. Community sports are down. Things like 4-H. That's what I grew up with. In many, many communities, that's gone. Yeah. And that's not a good thing.
No. And why is it happening? Because there's no adult people that want to take that leadership on. Yeah. It's a changing society, and I think it's not for the better. It's for the worst, really.
Yeah. You know,
anyway, we can lament about that lots, but
we can do a whole show episode on that one, eh?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So really, hey, I probably could, Art.
No, I'm not sure you'd get a lot of views on that one.
True enough. So off-farm interests, establish them and make sure you have something to look forward to for retirement, right?
And that's great for people my age, because we're sociable animals. I mean, if you have a local coffee shop, who do you see down there? It's the old timers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do something besides just drink coffee, okay?
Sounds good. Okay, so then let's move on to the next concern that the founders have. And I know you shared with me the concern about the next generation being ready. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah. One of the concerns of the founders is that, if I turn this over to the next generation, are they ready? Have they got the experience, the skills, the knowledge that's required to run this place? And the answer is probably no. How can they gain 40 years of experience in a period of, less than half that time? It takes a lot of skills to get to run a modern farm. So one farm or business expert that I follow is Dr. John Fast, and here is his book here, The Family Business Doctor.
Okay.
In that book, he suggests that young people, first of all, after high school, get a post-secondary education of whatever their interests are.
Okay.
And first of all, that's a good fallback position in case this farming thing doesn't work out.
True enough.
For some way, shape, or form, it gives them basic business skills or some sort of technical skill, academic skill, something they're not going to get on the farm. And so that's an important part. In that learning, they will meet other people that are like-minded in that particular endeavor, profession, whatever it is. So they're starting to build contacts for their lifelong experience. That will be valuable to them, because they'll say, yeah, I worked with, or I studied with Joe, and he had a particular interest in this, and now I want to do that, and I think I can find his phone number or find him on the internet and ask him about that. So that's useful in that standpoint. The next thing is, after you've got the post-secondary education, John Fast recommends that you work for somebody else other than the home farm for several years.
I agree.
It'll give you a valuable experience of seeing how other people run their farms, which probably won't be the way your farm is run.
Yes.
But it's just broadening your mind to other possibilities and ways of doing things. And then when you come back home, you'll say, Dad, I got this really great idea for changing our farm. And Dad will say, you want to do what?
Yes, exactly.
So there's going to be some give and take in that, but it'll open the mind of the successors to new possibility, different ways of doing things, which is so important. I remember a saying that I heard once, which is a little bit rude, but it's not obscene. So here it goes. Stay home, stay stupid.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty blunt.
Yeah. And it's not meant like that, of course. It's meant when you only stay home and that's all you know, your focus becomes that home and becomes narrow.
Yes.
So that's my concern on that one. And then if the successor or the founder feels that the skills are still not adequate, there's so much education available via the internet now, via Zoom. Just about every organization has online learning of some way, shape, or form. And so the other thing is that if the successor is not interested in learning more, that's a signal to the parents. Well, is this really the right person to take over my farm?
True.
Because if the successors don't have an open mind to continuous learning, I think that's a really issue that should be looked at very carefully. As part of my profession as a professional agrologist, every year I have to put in 35 hours of continual professional development. And I have to do that at my own expense. And so in the business plans that I write, I always put a section in on that farmers go to that kind of thing. And one of the big programs in Alberta, or one of the big venues for doing that in Alberta, is the annual Farm Tech Conference.
Yes.
Draws about 3,000 or so farmers from all of Western Canada. And it's 3 days of fairly intensive lectures, workshops, and things like that related to grain farming. So I really encourage grain farmers to go to that, and the other industries have similar events. And it's partly social and it's partly learning, and it can be a fun time because they can take their spouses along, stay in a nice hotel, and most of the meals are included, and there's just a lot of networking that goes on in those, which is so helpful.
Farm shows are really the best part of the year. I'm missing them. 2 years now of no farm shows because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah. Okay, so then concerns, we reviewed a few. Now we're on to concerns that the next generation isn't ready. That was some great suggestions. I love that. Me too. I'm a constant learner as a business person. I'm always learning to improve my business. If I had, and again, age appropriate, but if I had, just like when I have staff, if they don't really have a desire to learn, that doesn't impress me very much, right? How eager are you? Put a little effort in. And same would go if I had children and they wanted to take over the farm. Well, what are you doing to make sure that you are going to be the best farm owner going forward, little Bobby or little Susie? And if they sit there and do whatever and no interest, I don't know that I want to take my whole farming empire and pass it on, right?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I'll try it anyway. Just before we recording this, we talked about how do you fire your son or daughter?
Yes.
And I brought the other aspect into that. How do you fire mom or dad?
Yeah. Are you going to fire me because I'm a mean boss? Is that what you're saying?
Well, sometimes things don't work out, and then we have to look at other avenues. When things don't work out, that reminds me, another book.
Oh, yes. Necessary Endings, Dr. Henry Cloud, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I've heard of that one.
Or the successors that don't seem to be making progress with their farm succession plan. I really, really recommend that book. You can get it from your library. Probably that's where I got it. That's why I just got the page and not the whole thing. Is that you really have to consider if the succession thing isn't working for you by the time you're 35 at the latest, do you really want to stay there and risk having this split amongst all your siblings and you being left, well, it's not high and dry, but your future is certainly in jeopardy. So, yeah, sometimes you got to make tough decisions, and I've encountered those in my work. I remember one dairy operation in particular. It was actually a son-in-law, and the daughter was the farmer's daughter, obviously. And the son-in-law said to me, "Yeah, I'm 35. If father-in-law doesn't make a decision on this soon," and it was a corporate farm, and have them written into the corporate structure, then I'm out of here, because I can't wait another 10 years till I'm 45, then find out I'm not going to be part of the farm, and then how do I start a career outside the farm?
Yes.
Oh, yes, there's some serious considerations there.
I'm glad you touched on that, because as you know, and with this episode, I don't have time to waste, nor does anybody else. We only get one life, right? Let's just get on with it. And to me, I get a lot of emails, and I know a lot of people that are being strung along and they can't make any progress. And I don't want them to push or do anything crazy, but I'm so happy that you shared that. When is enough enough? Like, at what point you go, okay, if this isn't working out, I need to make sure I take some of my prime career years and invest that into something else then, if this farming isn't going to work out for me, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. Yeah.
Not fun, but c'est la vie, right?
Well, it's like Elaine Fraze says, if to the founders, it's your farm, it's your choice, but also to the successors, if it's not going to be your farm, then you have a choice also.
True. That's very powerful too. Okay, so I want to chat about the next big stumbling block thing that holds parents back, and the fact that they know they need to talk about transition planning. They know it, but like you said, they've heard the neighbors talk about it. They got into a big family fight. So let's chat about that, because I have a feeling a lot of founders ignore it because they don't want fighting in the family.
Yeah, nobody wants that. And really the work that I do, and I think most other facilitators like myself do, is that peace in the family is one of the paramount issues, if at all possible. And I know the farm mom wants this, wants peace in the family. And so how do we keep that? Well, farm succession by its nature is a difficult topic for most farmers to initiate themselves, because they're not familiar with it, and anything you're not familiar with, you're apprehensive about. And so how do you start it? Because if you go down the wrong track right from the beginning, it can be a train wreck.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So for most people that I know, I guess, that they have used some sort of a facilitator to help them that knows a path to follow. And so that would be my recommendation. I belong to the Canadian Association of Farm Advisors. We have in our membership across the country, we have people that have specialties in this area, know how to do it, know how to work with the family issues. So that would be one recommendation that I would make. And some people say, well, how much is it going to cost me? Well, yes, it's going to cost you some money, no doubt about it. How much is it going to cost depends on the complexity of your organization, your corporate structure, and a lot of things, and how well the family gets along or doesn't. And so time is money when you're talking to a consultant. I'm working with a farm family now, and they wanted to know a price and for my services, and I said it'll probably be in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $5,000. That's not the whole package, because we will need an accountant involved to that with that to deal with the corporate structure, the tax issues. And then once we've sort of got that sorted out, we'll need a lawyer involved to rewrite the wills and just put some legal documents into place that actually allow the plan to happen the way it's intended to. So what are we looking at totally? Conservatively, probably $25,000. I just heard of another situation that a fellow phoned me and said, Dad's working with, I think he said an accountant, and he said, he's worried he's not getting his money worth and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Well, I said to him, it's going to cost some money. It's not for free.
Yes.
So I said, I tossed out $20,000. And he said, oh, we're way past that. We're at 50,000 already.
Wow, eh?
I said, well, what have you got for 15,000? Well, I don't know what we've got for 15,000. He didn't know because he hadn't seen exactly what had transpired between the accountant and Dad at that stage. So yeah, that something seems not right to me there. And of course, I can't make any judgments as to what happened or didn't happen, but that seems to me on the high side. Okay. The other thing we got to remember, we're transferring assets in the millions easily.
Yes.
And I've dealt with farm succession situations where they've been 10 and 15 million. They've also dealt with other situations that are 2 million. So the amount of assets that there are is going to dictate in part how complex this thing gets.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
I was just, sorry, Art. I thought you were done. I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought that up. This whole episode is opening the can of worms, and I like some frank talk here. And the weird thing, and pick it back up here after I'm done, but the weird thing I find, and it's probably a human psychology and even a farmer thing, I notice it. We have a hard time paying for stuff like this because it's not every day. And that I often think that's another excuse to, it's going to cost money. But the farmer will turn around and go buy a quad for 10 grand cash and not think twice. Or a calving camera. Like, farmers spend 10 and 20 grand in no time on tangible stuff, and they don't give it a second thought. But again, I probably think it's a bit of an excuse, a barrier to deal with something we're not ready to deal with. But you know what? I mean, if you want it done right and you want to keep the family farm going, you want to keep harmony going, and you don't want a huge tax bill, well, to pay a little bit of money to keep your family and farm in place, like, what's the cost on that? That's almost a Visa commercial, priceless, right?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there in one word that jumped out on me. It's tangible.
Yes.
Farmers like tangible assets. I always put it this way: farmers love their iron.
Yes. Exactly. I should have said if they bought a old tractor model for $20,000, they wouldn't think twice, or a quad or anything. And heck, I've seen us do it too, and I've even had those processes that I've walked through. So I wanted to name that because really.
Well, the other thing is that how much is a new combine cost these days? $800,000?
Oh, the tire on one of those things, I don't know what they cost, but I'm sure the tires alone cost 20 grand. Somebody's laughing at me in the audience. I don't have a combine and I don't change the tires, so I don't know. But
yeah. So I think the important point of what we're saying is you got to keep it in context. It's going to cost some money, but compared to other farm expenses, it's not a biggie.
Right. And I mean, the other thing too, you correct me on this, but this is not going to be, here's 20 grand and you plop it on the table. It's a process with different advisors. And I imagine that might even be stretched over a year or two or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, you try not to stretch it out too much, but yes, there will take some time because people have to process all these changes, and we're not programmed to make split second changes or changes overnight kind of thing. We have to mull these things over in our mind, think about them, what are the implications and all that kind of stuff. But I don't like these things dragging on for a couple of years, because then you lose momentum. And then, maybe the case that I talked about, they lost momentum, and the end point isn't in sight.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah, that's a great comment. Okay. So fighting, family fights, that was one of the ones they were concerned about. Did you want to touch on that a little bit more before we carry on?
Well, just to say that I think a facilitator can calm the atmosphere somewhat. When I'm working with a family, for the first time, I say, we're all going to be respectful. We're not going to use any foul language. Everybody gets a turn to talk, and nobody dominates the conversation. And so that kind of settles people down. And when I sense things heating up, we'll say, okay, we're going to take 5 minutes now, and everybody just go to different parts of the house or the place where we're meeting. And we'll take 5 and try to settle down. And then we're going to come back, and I'm going to summarize what's happened to this point and make some suggestions for going forward. So
I love that.
Try to just lower the probably anxiety is at the bottom of it, and try to maintain orderly semblance of events so that we can move on in the process and try to get over the arguments which usually are over not really significant points.
Yep. The family.
You did this to me when I was 5 years old.
That's what I was just going to say. The family fights that happened 100 years ago that they're still upset about. That's what I like about the advisor. This stuff it can be very technical, but not only that, you have somebody coming in, and I'm going to use that word control. You have somebody coming in to take control of what could be a scary, situation, right? And lead the family through with processes. And I'd imagine too, if we have somebody there to guide us and coach us and maybe hold us on better behavior, not saying we're all a bunch of animals, but if it's a heated family discussion, having an advisor there would keep some semblance of peace, right? And guide them through.
And the other thing that I do when I notice somebody is really being hesitant and quiet at the table, I can say, okay, we're going to take 5 minutes, and I'd like to talk to Sally in a separate room. Smart. And I would mention to Sally, I see you're not really participating. Do you have some concerns, and what's going on inside of your head? And then usually that person will feel more comfortable sharing with me what's concerning them. And then when we reconvene the meeting, I'll somewhere slip in and say, there's another issue here that we haven't concerned and we haven't addressed, and we need to, because it's concerning some people.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
So you get the vocal people at the top, and you've got the quiet people at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to try to bring the top down and bring up the bottom.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's a good way. I don't have an issue. Obviously, if I run a show, I don't have an issue saying my piece. And I often forget that there are the ones that do not want to say it out loud. And your job as an advisor is equally, if not more important with those ones, to make sure that everybody's heard, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay, so let's say, I think those are the main big concerns. Yeah. If I forgot something, jump in there. But let's say, pardon?
We've covered it, I think, yeah.
Okay, good. So let's say we've moved ourselves through all those issues and we start planning. And unfortunately, the thing that we fear the most happened. The family starts fighting. What now? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think that's where the facilitator or somebody that has experience working with farm families can be helpful again, because you try to separate the warring factions, and I'm working with one farm situation now where we have one on-farm child, but he's not a child, he's 60 years old. Dad is 84. It's supposed to be a succession plan.
Wow.
I don't think so. There are 6 off-farm children that all want a piece of the action.
Oh, wow.
So we have, considerable differences among family members. And so what I'm trying to do is bring all, well, can't bring the different issues or people to a consensus, but I'm always trying to say, okay, if for the on-farm child, can you give up this? Can you give up that? So then I tell the whole family that everybody has to bend a little bit to make this work. The on-farm child isn't going to get everything. The off-farm children are not going to get nothing. They will get something. It's not going to be an equal share to the on-farm child, because in that particular situation, the on-farm child has been on-farm since they were born.
Yes.
And the off-farm children left shortly after the early adulthood. So there's a big gap there to be addressed. But again, the off-farm children expect something, and I think they should get something.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay. One point I want to make. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, issues to deal with, but it can all be handled if people will just bend a bit. And that has to be a basic understanding from the beginning. Nobody gets everything they want.
And here's where I want to connect the dots too. And I had a situation like this in my life, and it was a big game changer. So I want to say, let's say you're a farm family and you're trying to do transition planning. I always say, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Yeah. And I finally learned a concept. In addition to that, we only have the knowledge in our heads, right? We only know what we know. So if we are a family that's sitting down to talk about transition planning for the 10th millionth time, and then it starts into a fight again, maybe we should conclude that we don't have the knowledge to get this problem unstuck. And I actually did this for myself in a personal area. I was trying to make an improvement in X part of my life. And I just about get to where I was over that and ready to proceed. And then I would be brought back down to the same point. And I finally heard that concept that if you can't get yourself unstuck to this point, why do you think you're going to be able to do it tomorrow or the month after? Eventually, you need to bring in new knowledge and new processes to get it done.
Yeah, I'm just reminded of a saying that was attributed to Albert Einstein, but it's not his. It came out of somewhere else. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yes, I love that one. I say that to myself when I'm doing something silly again. That's the quote that pops in my head too, and it's so true.
Yeah, and it's kind of silly, but it's true. It's true.
It's true, yeah. And I think that's where advisors really do come in, right?
If you don't have the expertise around the table, you got to find it. I mean, farmers hire crop consultants, they hire lawyers, they hire accountants. Why? Because they provide expertise that's not available to them. So why is succession planning any different?
I can say why, because it involves some touchy-feely stuff they don't want to talk about, but that's the exact concept, right? And even more so, if it's somewhere you don't want to go and you don't want to talk about that, it's a reason to bring somebody in to facilitate those conversations, right?
Yeah, and then the thing is, the first facilitator that you choose or talk to may not be the right one, right? There's got to be this personal connection to them. And of course, being the age I am, I can relate better to people in my own age range. And I could see where a farmer would have a problem in my age to an advisor coming in their 30s, right?
It's true. Yeah.
So that's not to say anything bad about people in their 30s, but it's just the way people are wired, and age-related issues are dealt with.
Right. Yeah. I could see that totally. Okay. So if it boils down into fights and arguments and ill will, seek an advisor. So I want to get some more actionable advice from you. So the next generation, they're watching the show right now and they're going, oh my gosh, maybe that's why dad or mom are not talking to us about this. They're probably concerned about control, everything we spoke about. Okay, so Art, we've chatted about all these big reasons that I think that are at the root of why founders don't want to do transition planning. I love this. Now, for the generation that's coming up, Generation 2, what are your words of advice to them if the founders just don't want to talk about this?
Well, your assumption in what you've been telling me is that you've tried to talk to the founders and they don't want to budge on this. So
yes.
Then the next suggestion I would have is to draw in an outside facilitator or whatever you want to call somebody like me, and say, we're having this problem. Mom and dad don't want to budge. Can you come in and help us? And I say, yes, I'll try.
Yes.
So, and my plan of action would be to make an appointment with mom and dad and hopefully sit down with them at their kitchen table because they're comfortable there. That's their domain.
Yes.
And I'm the outsider. And so I'll come in very carefully and hesitancy. And after all the small talk, we'll say, okay, Sally and Joe, your children have talked to me and this is a concern to them. So can you tell me why you don't want to move forward on this? And if I've been tactful enough and they do open up to me, then I can say, okay, I understand your concerns. And like we did on this interview, there's their reason. And I'll try to come up with responses for them that hopefully will address that concern. Is your concern loss of control? Yes, it is. So how do we do that over a period of time? So you each meaning the founders and successors, get comfortable with a process that moves that over a period of time. And as I said previously, probably 5 years. And is your concern that you're not going to have adequate income in retirement? Yes. Okay. We'll leave so many quarters in your name till you pass till the final of you two passes, and then it'll be split up somehow amongst the farming and non-farming child. So you go through the same process on an individual basis. And hopefully by going through that, it'll achieve something. And if it doesn't, then I have to say to the children, I've tried, and sorry, I wasn't successful. Here I see my options. Do you want to try somebody else? Maybe it was just me. I didn't click with the parents. Or is it time to say, to do this?
Yes.
Is it time for this? I can't make that decision for you. It's yours.
Okay. I'm going to be a little technical here because I think sometimes these conversations and processes are so heated, and we stew on this and spin in our heads, and we sometimes don't even know the right way to do it. So I'm listening to you. I'm going to pretend I'm Tracy, the farm daughter that wants to take over the farm right now. And I've asked mom and dad various times, express my interest in buying the farm. And I really get shut down. They say, we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later. I'm not a little spring chicken anymore. I want to know where my life is going. So they aren't getting anywhere. What is the process? And this is going to sound very detail oriented, but I want people to feel comfortable in steps. So I pick up the phone and I say, hi, Art, here's my situation. This is all the details. I'm not getting anywhere with my parents. Can you talk to them? And you say, sure, right? I'm willing to try. Now, here's what I wonder here. And this sounds a little highly detailed, and I'm not detailed, but I just want people to have the tools. So I had that conversation with you. What happens from there? Do you call the parents, or do I go back to mom and dad and say, mom and dad, I'm very concerned that you guys won't talk to me. I've tried to bring this up 5-6 times every year for the last 5 years. I called Art. He's a farm consultant, and I would like him to talk to you. Can you guys call him? Is that the next step? Do I put the ball in their court and they call you, or do you just call them?
After you've made the introduction, and I think that's very important for you to make the introduction,
Okay.
I would call them, because I'm afraid if they haven't acted up to this point in time, they're probably not going to act now.
Yes. Okay.
I will call them and say, can I come to your house and can we talk at a certain time? Or do you want to meet in a local coffee shop? Well, we can't do it now, but at another time, and talk about this. And if they shut me down, well, I'm shut out. I can't do anything. Hopefully, during the phone conversation, I can try to settle their fears a little bit and say, look, I've been doing this work for 10 years. I think I have certain skills and abilities to work with these situations. I've worked with a number of them. Here are some of the tools that I use. Maybe we could start with a Zoom meeting if they don't want to do an in-person thing right off the bat. They obviously need some comfort in this process to move it forward, because if they're not going to talk to Joe Blow from Idaho if they have no comfort to that person. This is intensely personal stuff. It's financial stuff. It's at the bottom of their well-being. So yes, we have to approach the situation quite carefully.
Okay, perfect. So I make that introduction. You'll end up calling them. You chat with them. And I'm not going to be there when you're talking to them, because of course there's probably, if they haven't said it to me, there's some issues. And if I'm sitting at the table while they're talking to you on the phone or in person, they're still not going to say it. So the second generation shouldn't be there.
That's right. It's just
okay.
Between me and the parents, and see if I can draw anything out of them.
Okay. And then from there, I mean, it's really 3 outcomes, right? They work with you and it starts to move along. It doesn't work out. And then the 2 generations decide to just be status quo and keep on going. Or the 3rd generation says, look, hey, I'm at the point where I need to know. If you guys can't let me know, I'm going to go seek a career somewhere else, right? I mean, there's 3 outcomes at that point, right?
That's the way I see it. Yeah.
Okay. And it's really, I mean, in everybody's hands. You don't have to jump ship right away. You can stay status quo, et cetera, et cetera. We all have decisions, right?
But if it comes to that point, I think the successors or non-successors have to be quite clear. Mom and dad, if we're not going to move this forward, I'm making plans to do such and such.
Yeah. And it doesn't always have to be all or nothing. Like, I need to know that this farm is going to be mine next month. It can be, I need to know you guys have the intention of letting me start to buy in, right?
Right.
Just communication.
It has to be more than communication. There has to be positive steps to make that happen. By such and such a date, we will sell you or give you something X. Land is best because it gives you an equity position that you can work with and something that you can tie yourself to for your future. So yeah, it can't be just talk. It has to be written down, and really actionable steps have to be decided upon.
Okay, that's gold. Thank you. I know that was very detailed, but I can imagine people going, okay, I want to call Art, but what about this? I don't want my parents to be mad. Is he just going to call them? So I wanted to get a little step by step there. So that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Glad you brought that up.
Okay, perfect. So one final thing I want you to touch on as we wrap it up, and I mean, I could talk to you for hours, but this has been such gold already.
My glass is empty.
Oh boy. Okay, I'll give you some of my water over here, Art, so you don't have to go anywhere. So I would like for you to share some final words of wisdom and really touch on the triggers of succession. Can you share those?
Yeah. Again, I like visuals. And can you see those?
A little bit. It's kind of fuzzy.
That better?
Death?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'll talk about them.
Perfect.
Well, these are the big 5 Ds or triggers to succession or non-succession or changes in a person's life. Death of a family member or a close friend. Not talking the person's own death, because of course that'll create circumstances that we already talked about. So death of a close family member will shock the whole system. Of course, divorce will. Receive a new diagnosis, unfavorable diagnosis of a health thing. You went to see the doctor and say, oh, guess what? We found a lump.
Shoot.
Yeah. Or something like that. Experience a significant decline in health. And of course, for people my age, that's a concern. You can't do what you once did, lift as much, your back aches and so forth. So decline in health. Or you reach a new decade, a milestone. Oh my gosh, I'm already 70? How did that happen?
Amen to
80?
that. Yeah.
Like I talked about previously, the 84-year-old that phoned me about a year ago, and we were ready to head to the family discussion table, and then COVID came along and kind of kiboshed that. So,
Oh boy.
Yeah, so things can travel forward pretty quickly, and I encourage people not to be this 60, I think it's actually a 64-year-old son that's trying to push the succession plan through now, if we can call it that.
Wow. Yeah.
His son is close to 30, I think. So we're actually moving to the second successor generation in that one. Not really, but we have to clear the first hurdle before we can go to the second successor generation.
And I've seen that happen, Art, and what a crying shame for that son, because he really, he farmed all his life, and I'm sure he enjoyed what he did, but he really, I'm not saying he missed his kick at the can, but if it's to the point where the third generation can be taking over shortly, what a shame that father, the middle generation, it's a shame that it just was drawn out that long.
There is an old will in place, but it's not fair to him. And so the other thing is that it's a small farm close to Edmonton. It's a dairy operation. He milks cows every morning, starting I think it's 6 o'clock till about 7:30. He's got a full-time job in the city.
Okay.
He drives into the city, and he's back every day about, I don't know, 4 or 5 kind of thing to milk again. And he also gets some help from his son. So, yeah, how he does that, I don't know.
He's a hardworking guy. Okay, well, that has been amazing, Art. Thank you for joining us on this episode. I really wanted to get to the nitty-gritty and talk about these underlying issues, because I'm guessing, I have this eerie sense, I can feel what people are thinking in the audience, and a lot of them are probably going, oh my gosh, that's my dad. Oh my gosh, maybe that's what he's thinking. So how can I use this knowledge that Art just shared to maybe approach him in a better way, or bring in a consultant, right? So one final word of wisdom to our audience. Is there anything you want to share to wrap up the episode here?
Yeah. Something you just said tweaked something in my mind. It's not always dad, it's mom. It's usually mom and dad, but probably dad more so than mom. So there's 2 people involved. And just at the end of this interview, I'd like to put in a little plug for myself.
Yes.
Is that I'm available to help people, and I have a website, AJL Consulting, you can see on my vest here. So just look me up, shoot me an email, give me a call, and I'll try to work with you. And now with that we have Zoom, it's so easy to work with just about anybody, anywhere. Although most of my work in Alberta, I've worked with people in Saskatchewan, and I have connections in Manitoba. So it doesn't really matter. If you don't mind working over the internet, that's fine. I've just did a business plan for a new dairy. He's only 20 miles away from me. But we did it all through Zoom and emailing back and forth. And $3.2 million venture. We emailed back and forth to the lender. He got his financing in place. So although personal contact is nice, it's not essential.
Yeah, that's the world we live in nowadays. That's perfect. I'm glad that you touched on that. I was going to ask you to give your information. So AGL Consulting, and what I'll do... What was that?
AJL, yeah.
AJL. Okay. I will make sure to include your contact information on the show page on our website on Farm Marketer. So if you guys are interested, you can connect with Art right away. Or if you're watching this episode, listening, go to Farm Marketer, the show page, and we'll have Art's contact information in the notes as well. So wow, I am so excited. I love this episode. Thank you, Art. I really wanted to get into those nitty-gritty issues, and I wanted to thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Oh, you're welcome. I love talking to people. I used to work for Alberta Agriculture, and we used to do this kind of extension work in a different form, of course, for many years. So it's kind of in my blood.
Love it. Good.
Okay. Yeah, bye.
Thanks so much. And thank you guys for joining us on another episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.